my pleasure to welcome you all here. So I'm working for Centexbel, who is the coordinator of Herewear. So we are really proud to be able to have our final event here in Berlin and to introduce you to our full day of Herewear. So what we will do all today, so we'll here in the forum have presentations on different topics. So we'll start with the Herewear vision, showing what Herewear is about and how it is linked to the policy which is ongoing, to the goals of the European Commission. After that, we will go more in detail on the results obtained within the Herewear projects, with some of our project partners giving a presentation on their outcomes. After that, we'll see how Herewear actually looked around us and how did we obtain our outreach. We have some roundtable discussions around the pillars of the Herewear project. Then, of course, we also have our exhibition. I think you've all seen it already, so a warm invite to have a close look to all the materials that we have been developing and to discuss with our project partners. So this is the agenda of our forum. So we will start with the Herewear vision. After that, we'll have a short coffee break and then go in detail on the Herewear project results. After the lunch, we'll talk about our outreach activities and roundtables. And then please also stay, because at the end we do have our networking drinks to have a further chat on our Herewear project. So that's it as a very short introduction. And then now I'll give the word to Becky, who will share the first session.
Thanks so much everyone for coming today to this really special day. It's marking the end of a really great project. We've been working together for nearly 4 years now, and it's great to have everybody in the room here to sort of examine, question, lots of questions please. Questions will be at the end of every session, so I want you to be keeping your questions and then throwing them at the speakers at the end of each session. So I'm going to be sharing this very first session, the vision, which is the broader context for the project. My name is Professor Becky Early. I'm based at UAL in London. We've got 5 speakers, and then we have the Q&A at the end, hopefully around 10 minutes, and then we'll be breaking for coffee at 11:50. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker. So most speakers are online. You're going to be looking at them here on the screen. And we have one speaker in the room, which is Lien. So first up, we have our project officer, who is Anna-Karin Runemo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, good morning to everybody in Berlin and online. So my name is Anna-Karin Runemo, and I'm the project officer of the Herewear project at the European Research Executive Agency, or the REA agency of the European Commission. And I'm really glad to be with you today for the final event of the Herewear project. In the unit REA B3 on biodiversity, circular economy and environment. And we monitor projects financed under the Horizon Europe program, which is the EU's current framework program for research and innovation. And we're also monitoring grants of Horizon 2020. And in my sector, particularly the parts dedicated to circular and bio-based economy, under which the Herewear project has been funded. And so the Herewear project, promoting bio-based, local, sustainable, circular wear, was indeed funded under a call in 2020 on innovative textiles, reinventing fashions, which was aimed at developing new processing technologies and innovative and sustainable bio-based textiles, and thereby making efficient use of resources, phasing out of microfiber release, and accelerating the development and adoption of sustainable circular business models. And boosting circularity in the textile sector is among the EU's priorities. In the context of the EU Green Deal, the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, and the EU Strategy for Sustainable and Circular Textiles. And the EU has introduced a number of initiatives and legislation revisions in its policy framework. For example, the recent revision of the Waste Framework Directive, with a focus on more circular and sustainable management of textile waste. And in a policy context, I'm really glad that 2 colleagues of the European Commission are participating as speakers in today's event. So we have Vincenzo Gente, Policy Officer from DG Environment, who will present the Waste Framework Directive, including the extended producer responsibility schemes in the context of textiles. And Paraskevi Filippousi, who is Policy Officer in DG Research and Innovation, who will be speaking about circular bio-based textiles, R&I. So on a broader level, it's often said that the transition to a circular economy is not going fast enough, and we need more action to genuinely extend the life cycles of products and adopt business models that advance the use of secondary raw materials. And according to the Circularity Gap Report 2024, the world is in fact only 7.2% circular, which means there's plenty of room for circular action. And the latest European Environment Agency report on accelerating circular economy in Europe stresses that in general terms, waste management and even recycling is not enough. And we must place the focus on reducing resource use and design solutions. And textiles are indeed identified as a key product value chain with strong potential for the transition to circular business models. And systemic innovations play a key role in this, and both in terms of technological, but also social, organizational, and business innovations. And so therefore, we believe that Herewear and also its sister projects that are also present in today's event, MyFi and the New Cotton projects, can make a considerable and meaningful contribution to these objectives. So the end of the Herewear project is approaching, and we're here today to learn about the project final results. And such results can indeed showcase the work being done with EU funding in that area. And events such as today's events are also important in order to valorize EU project results and to harness new knowledge and new solutions and alternatives for a better future EU policy making. In REA, we always encourage projects to collaborate through clustering activities or through sharing knowledge and exchanging on lessons learned. And this is in order to increase the project's impact and to ensure better input to policy developments. And therefore, I would like to thank the Herewear project for organizing this final event and for also having invited the sister projects and the Ecosystix network and also other relevant projects and stakeholders related to the field of circular textiles and fashion to actively participate in the event and to allow them to pass messages from their work and important R&I developments from their specific areas of work. And of course, we also wish to encourage projects to collaborate beyond the end of the project's lifetime and to continue collaborations within the established networks. To that end, I should also mention the Ecosystix conference taking place on 15th and 16th of October in Milan on circular textiles, and registrations for that open in July. And yes, with this, I would like to wish you all an inspiring final project event and with many thought-provoking discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna-Karin. If you're able to stay for questions later, that would be great. Our next speaker then is Lien van der Schueren from Centexbel, and they are the project coordinator.
Yes, thank you, Becky. So I'll just wait for the slides to appear. So I will give a short introduction, setting the scene of the Herewear project to remind you all what this is about, and then I will continue, of course, with more detailed information as well. So I just wait until it appears. Okay, thank you, Matthias. So here is just some general information. So it's a European project, innovation action. We started in October 2020 and we will soon end in October 2024 after running 4 years. So first of all, setting a bit what's the overall scope of Herewear. So on the one side we see how the clothing industry is still mostly organized at this moment. So we have the production of the raw materials, for example, in Middle East. Production of the garments is then happening in Asia, and then once finally the garments are made, they are being shipped to Europe. We use our garments, and at the end of life there is still a lot of landfilling and incineration, hereby also causing the release of microfibers. So I think we all are aware that this is not at all a sustainable way of working with our garments, so we want to have a more sustainable solution. And with Herewear, our intention was to contribute to this change. And we want to do this by using, instead of fossil-based materials, bio-based materials. Also, of course, we want to have a circular value chain, seeing how can we repair, reuse, recycle our garments. And what we believe is if you want to work more circular, you also have to work more locally. And that's why you see all the circular hubs spread over Europe in the graphic. So to summarize, what's the Herewear goal? We want to become more sustainable by working on 3 pillars: the use of bio-based materials, circularity, and then the local manufacture. And I'll just go a bit more in detail on each of the topics. So for the circular topic, we developed circular design guidelines, which will be later on presented by our colleagues from UEL. Then we also looked how can we make an optimized use of our materials. How can we reuse them? How can we repair them? We imagine and we understand that it's a quite complex thing, the circularity, and how to become more sustainable. So that's why we also developed some software tools to support the brands and the designers. And these tools are also available here in the exhibition to have a closer look at. Then we also worked on the labeling of the circularity, and then to end, if you want to work circular, you also want to avoid unintended releases, so that's why we also had a focus on the minimization of microfiber release. And also on this topic you can find more information in the exhibition. Then for the topic of bio-based, I think many of us know that in the clothing industry, cotton and polyester are the most used fibers. So we wanted to develop alternatives, more sustainable alternatives for these 2 materials. So for the cotton, we worked on cellulose, which was made from bio-based sources. And then for the polyester, we investigated the use of bio-based polyesters. Also, all the subsequent steps like coating, finishing, printing are being investigated to be bio-based. Then the last pillar is on the local aspect, and here we strongly believe in network manufacturing with a small-scale production which is as automated as possible via the use of microfactories. Of course, if you want to do this in Europe, you also have to have the actors in Europe present and to know them, so repair, reuse, but also potential recycling routes. A lot of work which had to be done with lots of different angles and expertise is required. Of course, that's the reason why we are working on this topic in a European project with a whole group of partners to get this done. And then to end, we would also like to show that the Herewear vision as a good example on how to get the textile strategy in Europe done. And then I do not want to go a lot in detail because results will be shown later on by our project partners. But just to give already an idea on where did we get for the 3 Herewear pillars. So for the bio-based, we showed that it's possible to make the bio-waste, the biosources, and to make good quality textile materials out of these. For the aspect of circular, we learned a lot about the design and that we have to make changes to the design in order to make it really, truly circular. For the last, on the local, we used our microfactories supported with digital technologies to make this happen. And this resulted in 2 really nice prototypes. We have our workwear polo shirt and the dress made of the cellulose straw-based materials. So we showed it's possible. Of course, we also need to have support to get this done, because making changes, making use of local European feedstocks, it also means higher costs. And in order to make it happen in the real world, we need to have the support from our public authorities. This is, for example, by the public procurement, by the setup of the EPR scheme, also by the eco-design for sustainable products. So this is something we really think is needed, and we do hope to get the support from the European Commission on this topic as well. So this as a very short introduction on Herewear, and then I hand over back to Becky to introduce our next speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, great. It's been a real testament to the project that we've all worked together so well, and actually that the results that are here today are actually so strong, I think. Although I'm not the judge, I might be biased. Our next speaker, we've got 3 presentations now, and each about 15 minutes. Our first presentation is by Enebog from RISE in Sweden, that's Research Institutes of Sweden. And the topic of her presentation is Future Visions of Local Bio-based Circular Product Manufacturing in the EU. So over to you, Emma.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation. I'm project manager at the Swedish Research Institute RISE. Lovely to be here. I'm going to talk about the future vision of local bio-based circular products and manufacturing in the EU. And when I got this request, I actually started to reflect and think about the county where I grew up. Here we grew a lot of flax 200 years ago, 200 to 400 years ago. And the farmers got wealthy, so they built these big red wood houses. And now there are like big statues in the fields in the rural areas where I grew up. But the point is here that actually learned all about this in school, but this is a part of my cultural heritage. I am proud of these houses. I'm proud of this part of the Swedish countryside where I grew up. And I just started to think about this topic. It's not only about competitiveness of European companies or job creating. It is also about actually cultural, community building, identity. So imagine how the Herewear vision might have an impact of how people feel and think about their community in 200 years ahead of time, because this building is actually 200 years old. So I think that is important to reflect about the impact that we will have on the future if all these ideas will come to reality. Okay, I will talk a little bit about how to consume in line with the Paris Agreement. Some findings from the CCTAC project, where we did 4 scenarios about the textile ecosystem. I will let us be inspired by some disruptive ideas and all the seeds that we can see, the signals that potentially can grow to something big. Okay, so what is consumption in line with 1.5 degrees? So you might recognize yourself or not. This is not my closet, but this is how many closets, wardrobes look like. We consume a lot. We don't even wear everything, okay? You know about this, I think, about the consumption, but I thought I would remind us of the figures, the data. So it has grown. The utilization rate of garments has dropped by 36% between 2000 and 2015, probably even more since then. We now consume 15 kilos each per person. That is roughly 30 garments, new garments each year, and only 1 to 2 garments that we on average consume is a second-hand garment. So how will this develop in the future? Well, if we continue like this, it will be roughly around 40 garments, new garments. What would it be if we would consume in line with the Paris Agreement? How many new garments can we actually buy then? Well, one report says only 5 new garments. That is a dramatic change from now that we are going to achieve in only 6 years. But another McKinsey report is a little bit milder, and they, if we will perform better in all steps in the industry of textiles, it can be roughly 20% that needs to come from a reuse or re-commerce business model. So then roughly 24 new garments can we consume new. Okay, so we can conclude that we need to consume less in the future, and also that we have a great fashion potential for the re-commerce business model, whether it's rental, repair, remaking, resale, that we prefer. This is already happening. The reuse market is actually growing faster than the retail market globally, so that's great. And Ellen MacArthur Foundation says that it has a potential to grow more, up until 23% in globally, and more in Europe, up until 38% market share. So this means that it is no longer science fiction to think that this has a great potential, and actually it could be even perhaps 1/3 of everything. Why not? 1/3 of everything that we buy and 1/3 of the total market comes from this reuse, re-commerce business model. So that is what we want to achieve in 6 years. So let's start to apply the 1/3 rule. You heard it first here, and tomorrow you will all begin. Okay. But it's not only fashion that we could apply this in. This is numbers from old numbers, but the only thing that I got. But we could also apply this in other businesses. Machinery, furniture, marines, medical equipment, whatever. Remanufacturing could be or needs to be a part of all circular global value chains. So imagine if you would apply this 1/3 rule in other industries. I mean, the European value chains would look completely different then. Okay, so let's go over to the textile ecosystem and how that could look in 2035. As we know, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. So we can see the signals, we can see the trends, but we do not know how the development will be, what may impact the future the most, of course. So in the CISOTAC EU project, we explored what will the future look like. We used the foresight method. We worked together with all partners. We had great fun, I can tell you, and we explored the uncertainties and the trends. And we asked ourselves, how can these trends and uncertainties impact the future? So we didn't want to have a desirable future. We wanted to explore and train on different possibilities. So we made a scenario matrix, and we decided that we think that the major things that will influence how the future will develop will be how the market will develop. Will the market be more global, or will it be more local or European? Will fashion or business models and consumption patterns, will it continue to be fast, or will it be even faster, or will it slow down? So these are the dimensions, the matrix where we developed 4 scenarios. I will not go through them all. You have lovely videos that you can find on LinkedIn, so you can go and look them up there. I will talk shortly about the local markets, because that is why we are here, and we want to learn more on how that can grow, or the European markets. So I will focus here a little bit. So basically, in these 2 scenarios, we imagined a future, one where actually these re-commerce business models, they flourish completely, and we prolong all garments' life, and we repair and we remake and we remend and so on. And on the other part, there's still European flourishing markets, but it's a little bit faster. And in this scenario, you don't even own your garment. You just have a subscription, and you get updates through an app or whatever, you know, digital platform you use in the future. So, but perhaps the future actually have a little bit of both of these two scenarios, where then we see how we can get to this future is by having more affordable global local services, repairable services, by where we need to have more of perhaps the semi-automated processes where things can be a little bit faster and a little bit cheaper, and where we need to have more skilled labor because this demand and requires lots of us. And in the scenario where we still have a little bit more of a slower fashion, we believe that the smaller companies may flourish a little bit more. On the other hand, where we have textiles as a service as center of this scenario, we believe that we need fully automated solution because it needs to be really, really fast if we want to have this subscription model as the center of how we consume. And we also need a very developed digital infrastructure. It also demands a lot of energy. So we need green energy for sure. And here we imagine that the big data companies will rule a little bit more. So these are two developments that may be what a European more dominated market could look like. And the truth may be perhaps somewhere in between. Okay. I will continue with some disruptive ideas that may inspire us, hopefully. So here we have a Swedish startup, and they have done a new design and producing process. It's like an industrial origami. So what they can do is actually that they can for sure reduce weight, and they use less components and less material. So that's why it's incredible for making it easier to do remanufacturing, but also of course it's less material, so therefore better for the environment. But so they have started to do some prototypes, and here you can see one example. So this origami way of producing has disrupted how you can use materials, basically. So imagine if you would implement this on other production products, you would have a very more efficient and more circular value chain for sure. Here we have a building in Oslo. And what's special with this is that it's made from another old building, basically. So they took all the materials, reused it, and put it into a new building, and did this beautiful patchwork of the construction. I think it's beautiful, but I think here it's the scale that is impressive. They've done a whole building made from an old building. And really shown that it is possible. Why not make wastewater our, source for new materials? In this example, it's bioplastics. And this is from the CISUTEC project. I think this is brilliant. It is a semi-automated repair station. So basically, we don't replace people, we just help them do a repair faster. It can save 10 to 40 minutes. It's going to be tested now during the autumn. But I think if we can scale this way of working, that we can automate some part of the process, making repairs cheaper, because basically it's too expensive now. We need to do something if this is going to scale. So if we can apply this on more processes, products, I think this can actually be a fast development of making garments live a longer life. Some seeds, things that we can see now that are happening, and it might be, what will scale and be the future. So we have Inditex, they are already doing this, reuse and secondhand. Will they apply the 1/3 rule? We will see until 2030. Will they have that courage? We hope. Here we have some Swedish example of it's art basically, but when they use secondhand garments and clothes, and they do beautiful work of pieces of work. But I think this is done in every country in Europe. It's hard to scale today, but I mean the knowledge is here. We can do it. I mean, who wouldn't want to be dressed like this? Perhaps not all of us, but I would. And then we have, this is the Swedish trains. They have remanufacturing the steel. So they just put out so this is an old steel in a new train. So they saved 5,000 tons by doing in this way instead of, selling the old trains. So it's done today and it can be done. This is from car manufacturing. This is an old component. It actually looks like that literally, and then they refurbish it or remanufacture it and they can use it again. So we have the knowledge. That's my point. Here we have Swedish municipalities, the organization for all Swedish municipalities, and they have done a legal framework on how municipalities can procure furnitures. So making it easier for the municipalities to know how to do this, because we need demand, right, from this. Otherwise, we will never apply the 1/3 rule at all. And also, just an example that it's only 80% of the Swedish municipalities that actually have procured a remanufacturing IT product. So we have a long way to go, but it's a big potential. Okay, I was fast. Thank you. Thank you for my question.
Thanks, Emma. That was wonderful. A glimpse into the future. It's fascinating. See if you can hang on for the quick Q&A. I've definitely got a question for you I'd like to ask, but thank you so much. We're going to move swiftly on to our second of these 3 presentations. We now have Vincenzo Gente, and he's going to talk about the EC textile policy.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation and for the very interesting presentations so far. So I will now, let's say, give you an overview on the revision of the Waste Framework Directive. So maybe not so exciting as the previous presentations, a little bit more bureaucratic, but still, I think, very useful for the textile sector. Just to present myself, I'm working a policy officer in the Directorate General for the Environment of the European Commission in the unit from waste to resources. And the presentations I'm giving now today, it's about the targeted revision of the Waste Framework Directive that was adopted by the Commission last July, but it is now under the co-legislation process. So it might be that during this process with the co-legislators, with the European Parliament, the Council, some of the provisions may change, but at the moment I cannot tell you which ones will change. So I'm just sticking to the initial Commission proposal. This is just to give you a little bit how it goes. So I will briefly introduce the main elements of the Commission proposal that are the extended producer responsibility scheme for textile. Where I say textile, I mean also textile and footwear. The producer responsibility organization that will have to manage these EPR schemes, and the general rules that apply for textile waste in general. So for the main element of this Commission proposal for what refers to the textile sector is the definition of some rules, general rules for extended producer responsibility for textiles. These are general rules that that will have then to be transposed by member states, European EU member states, into national laws. So we set the frame at the EU level, but still the EPR schemes will be managed at national level by the member states. So we have been introducing extended producer responsibility for textile to very specific categories of textile that are reported in the annex to the Commission proposals. And these producers will have responsibility of these products when they made them available for the first time within the territory of a member state. The producers are also defined in the regulations, in the Commission proposal, and we define producers in a very specific way. I'm not now listing them on the screen, but what it's important maybe to notice that we are excluding for the moment from the definition of producers, micro enterprises and self-employed tailors. So we want to reduce administrative burden for very small entities like micro enterprises and self-employed tailors. Then what this means that we set up a standard producer responsibility is that producer will have to cover the costs of specific activities mainly for the managing of the end of life of their products. So they will have to cover the costs of the collection and management of used and waste textile, the ones that are listed in this annex. But not only this, because we also would like that producers contribute to research and innovation. So part of the cost that they will pay will also be used for research and development in the area of textile, like sorting technologies or recycling technologies, but also for communication campaigns to raise awareness on sustainable consumption of textiles. So it's a broad list of activities that is listed in the Commission proposal. The producers that we make available on the market of a member states their products, they will also register in a producer register. There will be 27 register because, as I said before, this is a national schemes, but we will, as a Commission, put forward a format to harmonize the registers in all member states. What we would like to achieve with this Commission proposal is that the obligations of the EPR schemes are fulfilled collectively by all producers. So producers have to come together in a so-called producer responsibility organization that will, let's say, be in charge of the collection system of used and waste textile, and that will also collect the fees the producer will have to pay. And these fees will be based initially on the weight of the product they make available, the producer make available on the market, but we also envisage that other sustainability criteria will be used to eco-modulate these fees, as we said, and this will be likely based on the sustainability criteria that will be set up in the frame of the extended producer of the eco design for sustainable product regulation that it's on the way to be soon finally adopted and come into force. But there is a list of products. Textile one is on the priority products. So there will be work ongoing to define some other criteria like durability, recyclability, recycling content. And this will be then used by us to set up some criteria for eco-modulating this fee. In this way, we hope to incentivize producers to design products in a more sustainable way, because the more sustainable the products, in principle, the less fees they will have to pay to contribute to the EPR system. We also working together with the JRC, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, to some criteria to define when the collected textile ends up becoming waste, in order to have some harmonized requirements in all member states and to get the best out of the textile that is separately collected. So there is in terms general rules for textile, there is already an obligation in the Waste Framework Directive that is actually in force, that is to have separate collection textile by 1st of January 2025. So member states are already working on this. They have to be prepared to start this separate collection. In this Commission proposal, we are further specifying that the textile that will be separately collected is going to be considered as waste upon collection. So regardless of the indication that you might have in the bins for its waste of reuse, we would like this to be considered, legally speaking, as waste, because this will facilitate or we reduce the risk of free riders that put up bins there during the night, collect used textile, and then they don't know what happens about this textile. But also, it's on the other points that are on the slides, we would like to reduce the practice of illegal shipment of waste textile that is disguised as for reuse. So by defining everything as waste, then to ship used textile, we will producers or other economic operators will have to carry out sorting operation to define that the textile that is in there is really fit for reuse and can be reused in the destination country that is going to be shipped. And what we like to do is also that what is collected and is treated according to the waste hierarchy. So we would like first to give priority to reuse operation where possible when it's not waste, okay, but preparing for reuse or recycling. So we don't want to necessarily incentivize recycling, but first reuse or preparing for reuse. This is a little bit the timing. So the 1st of January 2025 is already set there. There's going to be the obligation for member states to set up separate collections for textile. But then, as soon as the co-legislators will agree on the final text of the directive or the amended directive and will be entering into force, member states will have 18 months to transpose it into national laws. We are expecting, but it's very tentative and indicative timing, that the process will for the co-legislation to adopt the Commission proposal will be end of this year, beginning of next year, hopefully, if everything goes well, but still cannot really say. And then, in addition to the transposition, there will be 30 months for member states to set up the standard producer responsibility systems in each member states. There will be also other initiatives I was referring before, like the work on the SPR, on the waste criteria, and this will be likely then for the SPR. There will be following the delegated act of the SPR, there will be an implemented act to set up the eco-modulation fees. And for the end of waste criteria, the JRC is working on it, and we hope that by the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, we will have new end of waste criteria for textile. So just to conclude, this is where you can find other additional information on the work on the eco-design for sustainable product regulation. There are already documents that are looking specifically at the criteria for textile. They're online, you can consult them. Then another important element linked to this waste framework, the revision of the waste framework directive, is the waste shipment regulations that regulates the shipment of textile waste. So in the waste framework directive, we are regulating, or we are adding some new requirements for the shipment of used textile. For the waste shipment regulation, then that it's entering into force last April, if I'm not wrong, we regulate the shipment of waste textile. Regarding financial support, I think you are part of involved in European projects. In the slides, you can see the main funding programs that are supporting projects on textile. These are either managed by the Commission via the executive agencies, or also at national level in the cohesion policy for regional fundings. And you can find for the direct management part fundings, you can find all the calls, all the information in the EU funding and tender portal. There you can find all the different programs and calls that are open at the moment, and also linked to project results. So it's very useful to get an idea of what's going on in terms of funding and projects already funded. Then I think this was also mentioned by Anna-Karin. I guess you are aware of the European Community of Practice for a Sustainable Textile Ecosystem, EcoSysTex. There you can find projects on textile and see what's going on, and maybe also become part of it if possible. And other useful information for you, it's you can find the European Environmental Agency website. There's been a recent report brief on used textile, 2 or 3 weeks ago was published. And then in the JRC website, where you can find many technical reports that were also used in support of the amended directive. So I think that's here from me. I think there will be question and answer at the end of the session, if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Okay, many thanks.
Thank you so much. That was super interesting. So we're really beginning to see a bit of the landscape that the Herewear project results are feeding into. With Emma, we're very much seeing, I loved her projection into the future and the kind of the technique of the project of actually long-term thinking. It's such a sort of rare way of working, and those methods of foresight, design thinking, backcasting, so important that we actually are doing all of this in order to head into the right direction and to ask questions like, how can we contribute to happiness in the future? And then from Vincenzo's presentation, we're beginning to understand this landscape, this emerging landscape of regulations, systems, actual initiatives coming into play. And so for the Herewear project, how are our products feeding into that? How have we considered what's coming online and how our materials, products and processes fit within this emergent framework? So our final presentation then for this session is from Paraskevi Filippousi, who is going to be talking about the EC Circular Bioeconomy, Textile Research and Innovation.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me as well.
We can.
Perfect. So thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm coming from DGRTD within the European Commission Unit B1, the unit working on green transition, and especially we focus on bio-based systems, but also circular economy research and innovation. So on the general context, of course, we start with the Green Deal and then moving to the Circular Economy Action Plan and the Textile Strategy and the pathways for textile ecosystems. So it's clear also from the presentation given by Vincenzo that it is a high priority for the Commission, considering the high pressure posed by the textiles in terms of the use of raw materials, including water, greenhouse gas emissions, but also microplastics pollution. So it's important to stimulate the transition to circularity, but also higher sustainability and safety. And within that framework, of course, the systemic change across the value chain is crucial, but it's clear that there also are R&I gaps that still need to be addressed. This is especially true when we want to move to higher NTRL, but also lower technological readiness levels, so more breakthrough innovation. So we have to tackle, let's say, both areas, which is something that we take into account within RTD. When it comes to the bio-based textiles, especially, there are several areas of focus. So first and foremost, the feedstock availability, sustainability, and quality, and this includes how we can integrate a bit more the use of the valorization of alternative fiber sources. So one can think, for instance, waste fibers use, and then how we can increase the range of bio-based fibers. And this, of course, includes the synthetic fiber, the natural fibers, but also the synthetic bio-based fibers. One will look into the market today and it will see that the majority is synthetic fibers with a 64% and cotton 22%, both being associated with environmental problems. So one thing is to look in the beginning of the value chain, the feedstock, but also how can we innovate on the biorefining? So the actual conversion of the feedstock into fibers and later into textiles. And of course, circularity and greenhouse gas emissions are important, but it's the overall sustainability and the safety of the production. So, for instance, can bio-based compounds provide alternatives for the production of textiles where there are a lot of issues today in terms of environmental pollution? So it can touch upon solvents, coatings, dyes, surfactants. And a little bit less technical highlighted here, but also still very important, is how can we stimulate the multi-stakeholder collaboration in the industrial symbiosis, but also not mentioned on the slide, but also the industrial urban symbiosis can be an important aspect. And of course, the end of life aspect, so towards the end of the value chain of the how can we address this, but not only for the bio-based textiles per se, but also blended composition. So blended meaning bio, but also bio, non-bio blended compositions. So circular by design is something not only relevant for bio-based, it's an overall principle also for other types of synthetic textiles. So we need to better design them for improving environmental performance, improve durability, repairability, recyclability, but also safety. I bring this and highlight this again, given the use of substances of concern, but also substances of very high concern that also has to be addressed. We see the need also to increase the recycled content in the final products and increase the upcycling and also reduce the release of microplastics and microfibers, which we see both at the production but also at the use stage. So what do we do concretely? And I'm going to focus more on cluster 6 of Horizon Europe because I want to mention this already that we have another cluster, cluster 4, there are other colleagues, another unit within DZRTD that is looking also into textiles, for instance, through their partnership process for Planet. But I will be focusing what we do mainly in cluster 6. I think Vincenzo showed before we have a partnership, which is a joint partnership between the Commission, but also the industry. So the Bio-Based Industries Consortium, which is a few hundreds of members representing the bio-based industries. And there we have a 2 billion public-private initiative, so quite substantial. We had the first work program of CBE in 2022, but before that, there's a predecessor of CBE, BBI, JU, which also involved a number of projects that look across the whole value chain, from feedstock sourcing to its valorization and the end of life of bio-based products. And it will be operating along Horizon Europe, CBJU. Let's see if there will be also a successor. And I wanted to bring into your attention some projects that have been already funded, and some of them have been completed, others are still ongoing, and they touch different TRLs. So, for instance, when it comes to RIAs with an end TRL of 4.5, you see here on the screen 5 projects. For instance, the 2 ongoing projects, BioLast and FIPSAN, both of them going on until 2027. They look, for instance, BioLast on valorizing underexplored biomass resources, such as forest residues, seagrasses, herbaceous crops, to extract high quality fibers that could be applicable to textiles, but not only. FIPSAN also looks into novel fiber value chains with a different type of feedstock in mind, and again, covering products that they are relevant to the textiles, but also, for instance, construction and the automotive sector. And there are 3 completed projects, GRID, Glavcos, and NeoCell, that all of them they look into fibers basically and different processes in order to produce them for different types of feedstock, like cellulose pulps, for instance, or wood, let's say woody biomass. And I want to highlight Glavcos, for instance, because they look into coatings that they are relevant not only for textiles but also fishing gear. So looking also into the fishing industry applications. For innovation actions where we go to higher technological readiness levels, so 6, 7, there is an ongoing project which will be completed next year in 2025. It looks into an interesting type of feedstock, so feather waste. And part of the products is covering geotextiles, which is also an important area where we need improvements in terms of biodegradability, for instance, and some completed projects, Effective and Biomotive. On the one hand, Effective looks into producing innovative bio-based polyamides from sustainable feedstock and how to validate them in consumer products and how to close the loop, including options for regeneration, recycling, and composting. And the biomotive, as part of the project, looks into upholstery fabrics. And when it comes to moving forward, of course, what you see is up to annual work program 22, what I showed just before, because this is where we have already some projects ongoing. But of course, now we have the publication of the 2023 granted projects, and there will be more coming in from the annual work program 24 that is still open. So there may be still many relevant to bio-based textiles projects coming up. And I want to highlight the fact that this work program of 24 is still open. And in fact, the deadline is in September 18, 2024. Overall, the core budget is quite substantial. It's 213 million. And you can find in the link provided more details about the full program. But I already want to bring into your attention these three topics, which could be relevant to the textiles, especially the first one, which is a flagship. So flagship goes up to TRL 8, and it includes the full value chain. So it's about bio-based value chains for valorization of sustainable natural fiber feedstock. So usually we have one project there of 20 million. And then also to highlight one EA, which is about bio-based materials and products for biodegradable soil applications. Here is not dedicated to textiles, as you will go through the call, but part of the potential application includes geotextiles. And the third one, the RIA, is about biotech routes in order to produce bio-based chemicals or materials that could replace animal-derived ones. And again, this is not only limited to textiles, but one can think of some textile-related applications. Also, I leave a link which has more slides and recordings from the info day that took place recently. But okay, one thing is CBE, but it's not the only thing that we do in Cluster 6. So we are trying to look into complementary areas and to have topics to also fund projects outside of CBE on bio-based textiles, but also circular textiles in general. So you see some example of topics that they have already been closed, and one, for instance, the first bullet point, look into production of the bio-based textiles. So not only how to have circular textiles, but also how to address zero pollution aspects during the production and use of the textiles. So we already know the project that you see on the screen, Cellfill. And then the second bullet point, it was a topic where it's a RIA topic, where we try to look into safe and sustainable by design, bio-based chemicals, additives, materials, or products as alternatives in areas where we have products where the recyclability is actually challenging. And this was not only covering textiles, it was also covering other areas. The projects are just starting, so more info will become available, but I can already tell you that the projects granted, they will already be looking into problematic chemicals that they're used in textiles production. So keep an eye on this. And then also in the past, we had some other projects that they look into the circularity of textiles and other types of value chains. So I highlighted below some of the projects that they have been relevant to textiles, so T-Rex, White Cycle, and Sisutak, which was mentioned before. And one thing is, yeah, the circularity, the safety and sustainability are important, but also how to, as part of this circularity concept, how to also increase the fiber to fiber recycling. So that can be done through different means. It can be through mechanical, thermochemical, thermomechanical, chemical, and enzymatic recycling. And here you see highlighted two calls that actually the deadline was quite recently closed, so in February 2024. The first one looking into aspects of sorting, recycling, and design for recycling, so covering this fiber to fiber recycling. And again, this now is not limited into bio-based textiles, so because we know that there is also a large part out there which is not bio-based. And then the second aspect is about circular solutions for textile value chains based on the EPR, which was also mentioned before. So to analyze how these kind of schemes can improve the circularity of textiles, to assess material composition in a wide range of used textile products and waste, and then to test separate collection options for reuse or end-of-life treatment that could be enforced through EPR schemes. So we don't know yet the exact projects being granted here, but it could be promising for this area. And two last things I want to mention is how can we think about integrating aspects first on digitalization. One thing is about collecting data and exchanging data, but also traceability. How can we improve on this? And the second aspect is about AI and IT tools for better design of textiles for the sorting aspects, but also of the optimization, either the design phase or the recycling, for instance. So I leave two topics. The first one already has two projects granted, is already from 2020. And the second one is about digital information systems for bio-based products that could be potentially relevant. Also, the deadline was recently closed, for instance, on the traceability aspects. So moving from the digitalization aspects to something also to keep in mind, maybe as a horizontal even aspect, if not some kind of dedicated topic of how can we improve on business models and consumer behavior. Different aspects to consider is the products as a service, how to prevent overproduction and overconsumption. I think some aspects highlighted in the previous presentations. How to develop innovative business models to improve on how to reuse, how to repair these types of products, and how to have more sustainable purchasing behavior, because you can have as much circular textiles or bio-based textiles as you wish, but I think this overconsumption needs to be addressed. And that encompasses the behavioral change pathways to reduce demand. So I have to say that in topics that you saw before, for instance, the one of Work Program 23 for Cluster 6 on production of textiles, we try to incorporate these things on behavior and uptake of circular textiles as a horizontal aspect. And I think that's my last slide. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we just have a few minutes now, around 6 minutes or so, to have some questions. I'm going to throw this open to the floor, but I'd also like to invite the online audience on the YouTube live stream to put questions into the stream as well. So let's kick off. Thank you, speakers. Do stay there. We may be coming to you soon. Does anybody have any questions? Very informative. I was scribbling away like mad. I was thinking of all the bits I could put in. But I'm going to kick off then because I've got a question for Emma. Can you hear me okay, Emma?
Yes, I can.
Nice to see you again. It was years ago since I saw you in Sweden.
Yes, likewise.
And your track record is very interesting because you've worked with secondhand clothing for so long. You know it really, really well. And so I love this project where you're looking at the future and you're seeing a future for how it could be even more integrated, even more stimulated and involved in the industry. But I'm going to put a tricky question to you, which is based on the news that's happening at the moment and companies like Mara Hoffman that have just gone under. Based on your research, I mean, these are the sustainable brands that have hung in there for a really long time, making clothes from sustainable materials in sustainable ways, but not necessarily having a resale part to their business. Do you think this might be a good way for some of the fashion companies who are in crisis to sort of, what do they say, stay alive until 2025, I think is the current advice for brands. Do you think this resale, reuse, repair, renting might be something that these brands could take on right now and help them survive? How do you see it?
Well, I think that's a great opportunity because if you have a good product, a quality product, probably someone else is, earning money from that product today in a resale market. Either it's the consumer themselves in a platform or it's some sort of a resale company. So I mean, I think for all there is a potential. So I think, and there's also services that companies can use. They do not need to invent this for themselves. There are platforms that they could tap into, so they can start to sell their garments, reuse some way through these services, or they can of course also start an own platform, or if they do it not digitally they can also do it in stores, of course. In Sweden, we see all these kind of examples right now, how fast fashion brands start to explore how they can go into the reuse market, and I think that is crucial. I think with the going from the linear to the circular business model, it's all about timing. So you have to explore different options. You have to see where there is demand, and then scale the ideas that will that your consumers prefer.
Brilliant, thank you. And of course, this whole project discussion this morning has been very much about bio-based materials. And I wonder if anyone's got a question about the Herewear project that they'd like answered during the course of today, because we're looking at new bio-based materials, new processes and finishing products that consider then the consumer's behavior, the longevity, the repair, and sort of end of life activities. Does anyone have a question about the project more generally? Jessie's at the back there, yes.
In Herewear, we've also been looking at the local dimension. And I found it quite interesting that you presented a diagram with scenarios, with 4 scenarios, but you only really looked at the 2 at the bottom. And I would agree with you personally, but what do you see as the transition path for the companies that are locked into global supply chains?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of your question, because I didn't hear?
I'll rephrase it. What do you see as the prospects for the 2 scenarios at the top of your diagram, which you did not explore? Because I found your exploration of the 2 at the bottom of the diagram quite interesting. But then I wondered what do you think are the prospects for the 2 at the top of your diagram?
Can I add to that question to open it up to the other speakers as well? Because it's really a question about textiles being big business, and we're looking at things that are at the moment niche but have a massive potential to grow. Jessie, you were asking what Emma and others think about the transition pathway. How can the large companies, how can the small companies embrace these new models, these new systems that are being laid out there for them by the research, by the investment, by the infrastructure that we've just seen presented. But how do the companies transition? What are the opportunities?
I can go first if that is okay, but I think what these four scenarios have in common is that they all needed some sort of a push, right? Economic incentives and policies, because to make this transition, basically, if you boil it down, consumers need to be incentivized to buy something that is probably more expensive, but also more sustainable. So perhaps we had low imagination or something, but even though if we go, for this global value chain, still depending on raw materials from other parts of the world, or if we would go into a flourishing, European market with dominance of repair options and so on, we see that the one thing that they have in common is that we need to hard word to say in English. We need incentives to consumers, because today, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's too cheap, basically, and it's too hard to go for the better choice for a consumer. We have to make it more easier, and also if we want to have a reuse market, or if these markets should flourish, we need also to make it a better deal for the consumer, basically.
Thank you, Emma. Any others in the speakers group would like to come in about any angle, actually?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that indeed part of the incentives is what we presented, so to provide funding, because through these projects we have academia involved, but also industry, in order to take forward some of this research and innovation, but also the policy incentives that Vincenzo presented will drive change. But I wanted also to highlight the aspect of international cooperation, which is something we need to provide, like within the context also of the RNI projects. And in fact, I would like to know, as part of your project, to what extent you included international partners. We try to formulate it also as a requirement, often in the scope of topics, to include international cooperation aspects, because it's true what Emma said, that it's one thing what we do in Europe, but is also to look externally to what extent we can drive change beyond the European borders.
Thank you. That's a really important point. Yeah, international cooperation, making these systems realistic, scaled, and functioning properly in the next era. Great. Oh, one more question.
That we had been a role in the consortium with these American, and also in the community there are people who have joined who were from Asia, Pacific Islands, Americas. So I think we had an international print even in Herewear.
Yes, brilliant, because we had the partners that were really looking to build that community right at the outset. And I'm going to have to draw a line under this session and send, one hand up. Okay, we're going to make time. Vincenzo, would you like to come on?
Yeah, very briefly about the incentives for consumers or for citizens. What we would like also to do with the extended producer responsibility, as I said in the presentation, is to raise awareness on sustainable consumptions. It's just not about the cost of the clothes items that are in some cases too low, but it's also we have to try to make really people aware of what is behind cloth items, the water that is used to produce it, the energy that is needed to recycle it at the end of the life cycle. So we have to make sure that consumers make choices in a way that it's also linked to the sustainability of the products they're going to buy.
Thank you. That's a really
And
important point. Thank you so much.
that's very important.
And to end on that point about consumer awareness, raising awareness and the incentives and actually sort of building the market, you know, there's a huge feeling out there now, an awareness around fossil fuels and our future. And this is why we're looking at the bio-based sector now for circular fashion. I'm going to let you go for coffee, but that was a really interesting session. I want to thank you all very much. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. Thank you.